Hello and welcome to Watch Releases Recap for the week of August 28th until August 25th. Let's begin with Zenith and their Defy 21 Chroma 2 limited release. Last year, in 2022, Zenith released a limited edition called Chroma. It was limited to 200 pieces and that edition sold out. This year, it's pretty much exactly the same set of watches. They look very similar, almost identical. They come in ceramic cases with these colorful semi-skeletonized dials, and these are also limited edition watches, now limited to 500 pieces. The price is pretty much the same as it was last year, $15,500, which is a lot of money, but these watches are not cheap, especially because of this unique chronograph movement. It tracks 1/100th of a second on a chronograph, which is very impressive. It also has 2 power reserves. It's a very impressive watch from a technical standpoint. Design-wise, these limited releases are not doing much for me. I think they're just a little bit too colorful, too out there. To me, the standard Defy 21 looks better, but hey, that's just my opinion. Moving on to the next release. GShock and Hidden NY limited edition collaboration. Just last week, I covered 2 different limited release collaborations with GShock. Well, hey, another week, another limited release with GShock and a fashion brand. This one is called Hidden NY. Apparently it's a very popular streetwear brand. I never heard of them, but probably because I'm not their target audience. And just like many others, they partnered up with GShock to release this limited edition watch. It's essentially a square-faced GShock, the 5600, just in a different color combination. It also has the Hidden NY logo on the display when you engage Lume. This sort of transparent raisin case is not really my cup of tea. Someone in a comment section on a Hodinkee article of this watch said it kind of looks like an old fishing lure, and once you see that, you cannot unsee it. I kind of agree with that statement. It doesn't look very good for some reason. I mean, it looks kind of yellowish, so it looks like an old worn out GShock. I guess that's the point, but out of the recent limited edition GShocks, this one is definitely not my favorite. But once again, it's not necessarily for me. It's for GShock collectors or enthusiasts of this Hidden NY brand. Moving on, Timex Giorgio Galli S2 automatic watch. Timex is one of the biggest, most well-known watch companies. They're usually known for their digital and quartz watches. This new Timex is completely different. It's called Giorgio Galli S2, so it's the second version of this Giorgio Galli line of watches. The S1 was released in 2019. It was also automatic, but this one here is completely different. First of all, it's powered by the Sellita SW200 movement, which is very interesting. And it also comes in a titanium case with a double domed sapphire crystal with some AR coating. I like a lot about this watch. I like the design of it. It's very simple. It's very understated. I also like the design of the case. It has a very interesting shape. Also, the size is great, 38 millimeters. It's a sweet spot for a lot of watch people out there. A lot to like about this watch, except for the price. It's almost $1,000 US, $975. I think for what you get, it's somewhat reasonable. I mean, of course, it's not competing with micro brands, but it's competing with a lot of other legacy brands. So $1,000, it's okay. I mean, it's not like they're asking for $5,000 for this watch. It's just a lot for a Timex. So that brings me to a question. Would you guys spend $1,000 on a Timex? Leave your answers in the comment section below. Even on a Timex like this, in a titanium case with the Sellita automatic movement, would you spend $1,000 or not? All right, moving on to the next release. Christopher Ward, the 12 in a 36mm case. It's not exactly a new model, it's just a new size in already existing model. We've seen similar moves from quite a few watch companies. Recently, the Tissot PRX, which is a very similar looking watch to this, was released in a 35mm case. Looks like that's where the industry is going, especially with these integrated bracelet watches, because they do tend to wear larger. Previously, this watch was only available in a 40mm case, which doesn't sound like a lot, but again, these integrated bracelet watches do tend to wear larger. So a 40mm case would probably wear closer to 42. If you have a smaller wrist or if you prefer the look of smaller watches, that was simply too large for you. Well, now having an option in 36mm is a great thing. It also costs exactly the same as the 40mm version, so the price won't be a determining factor. I think it's a great move from Christopher Ward. From what I hear, these watches have great quality. I never actually owned one or tested one myself, but on pictures at least, it looks attractive enough for a specific buyer, and I'm glad that we as consumers just have more options. Moving on, MBNF HM9 Sapphire Vision. So these watches I know nothing about. Apparently these are just two new color additions to the already existing lineup of these HM9 line of watches. They're a little bit out of my price range. They cost about $500,000, so about $500,000 more than I'm willing to spend on a watch like this. I guess they're for a very specific buyer, for a person that has everything and now they just want to have something ridiculous on their wrist, but probably more specifically in their watch box on a glass case display. Let's be honest, how many people are actually wearing watches like this? My favorite part of this watch is the fact that it only tells time. That's it. It doesn't even have a date. It doesn't have a second time zone. It has nothing. It only tells you the time. Just ridiculous watch. Ridiculous. And of course, rich people will buy it and this limited edition will sell out. They only made 5 watches, so I'm sure they will be all sold out by the end of this week. Grand Seiko limited edition GMTs. Grand Seiko is celebrating 25 years of their Caliber 9S movement, and to celebrate this, they're releasing 2 limited edition GMT watches. One is a more sporty watch, the other one is more elegant, they call it. Let's look at the sporty one first. It has a very unique dial. Grand Seiko really knows what makes them stand out, and is their dial design and attention to small details. I really like how this dial looks. It kind of looks like a cloudy sky, and you can definitely see all the little details that went into creating a dial like this. They're masters of this craft. Other things I'm not so crazy about. Like for example, the case size of this watch. It's 45.5 millimeters by almost 15 millimeters in thickness. That's too much. I don't know why Grand Seiko insists on making their sports models so ginormous. Who are they making these watches for? Every single watch enthusiast that I talk to says the same thing. I like Grand Seiko watches, their sports models watches, but they're just simply too large for me. I cannot pull off this watch because it's almost 45 millimeters in diameter. It also has some details that some people might not like for example, on a dial, there is a date at the 4 o'clock position. So that might be a turnoff for some people. Other than that, it's a very handsome looking watch. I think Grand Seiko has their own design language with these watches, which I appreciate. They're not really copying anyone. They're not really paying homage to any other popular GMT watches, which is great. That brings me to their other model, the more elegant one, they call it. And this model here is just a slightly different version of already existing GMT models in their lineup. This one has a date window at the 3 o'clock position, and it has a slightly more conservative design and the case size to represent that. It's 39.5 millimeters in diameter, which is a lot more reasonable. It's also thinner at 13.7 millimeters. I really like the look of this one. The dial on the sporty version looks better to me. I also prefer the water resistance on the sporty one. That one has 200 meters of water resistance, where this one only has 30 meters. Why? Why does it have only 30 meters of water resistance? I know what some of you will say, that's enough, no one's swimming with these watches, but come on, 30 meters, that's like a Patek dress watch water resistance. Give it at least 50 meters. Grand Seiko, they have the technology to do it. They just, for some reason, chose not to with this watch. Baffling decision, in my opinion. The watches are limited editions. The sporty one is limited to 2,000 pieces. The elegance one is limited to 1,700 pieces. I'm sure you'll be able to get your hands on one if you really wanted to, because these limited releases are quite large. If this is a watch that you like and you have $7,500 for the sporty one or $5,600 for the elegance one, you're in luck, because these watches should be available online and in boutiques in October. Moving on to the next news. This one is actually not a release. It's more of an industry news. You probably have heard by now that Rolex has acquired Bucherer retailer. I'm not going to spend too much time on this news, but I think it's important to highlight it and kind of give you my opinion on the subject. So first of all, what is this retailer? Bucherer apparently is one of the largest watch retailers in the world. They have about 100 locations with their sister brand, which Rolex also acquired, and they are one of the ADs for Rolex watches. Now Rolex will have their in-house or their factory ADs. They only had one before in Geneva, and now they will have a few locations worldwide. It's very interesting. Now, some people are starting to talk about how Rolex is trying to control their inventory and control the resale market, and I think that is part of this. I think Rolex is very aware of their resale prices on watches, and they know the shady practices that their ADs are performing, making people buy multiple other brands or multiple of less desirable models in order to sell them a more desirable one. That gives Rolex a bad name. So I think Rolex is very aware of that. Plus, they probably want to cash in a little bit on the resale watch money, although I'm not too sure because they're doing well as it is. They sell about 1.2 million watches every year, which is quite a lot of watches. So I don't even know if it's about the money or about the control for them. The second thing is actually a little bit more interesting. I think they didn't want anyone else to acquire this retail giant, which kind of makes sense because it's one of their biggest AD partners. And if one of their competitors, let's say a Swatch Group, has bought this retail giant, well, who knows what would happen with the relationship between this AD chain and Rolex. So it kind of makes sense for Rolex to step in and try to buy it before anyone else does. But that raises other questions from the other side, right? Because these guys also carry a bunch of other watch brands, including their own in-house brand. Rolex says that none of that will be affected. Bucherer will remain independent, business as usual, no changes whatsoever. Yeah, maybe in a short term, but in the long term, I don't know. Maybe they will try to push Rolex models more. Maybe it will be easier to buy the more desirable sports Rolex models at this AD. Who knows? I think it raises a lot of questions for the future, and I think ultimately it's probably better for us as consumers. For other ADs, yeah, they're probably a little bit worried right now. For us as consumers, I think this might be better. But who knows? Maybe Rolex will get too greedy and raise their prices and get complete monopoly, complete control, or maybe they will get complete control and stop this ridiculous practices that a lot of ADs are doing. Time will tell, but I thought it was an interesting piece of news to bring to your attention. And that's it. Those were the news updates and the releases for this week. Leave a comment in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about this week's releases. Do you like them? Do you not like them? Also, give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We release new videos every week. Thanks for watching this one, and we'll see you next time. Bye.